As World War II entered its fifth year, the Allied forces realized that liberating France would be a crucial part to winning the war and defeating the Axis powers. They planned a massive invasion unlike any the world had seen before. The invasion was launched on June 5, 1944. The invasion involved thousands of paratroopers from the 506th Airborne Regiment jumping behind enemy lines to clear a path for those fighting on Omaha Beach. The paratroopers' operation was successful in triumphantly liberating France and starting the end of Hitler's tyranny. Tragically, the 506th maintained one of the highest casualty rates in World War II, along with much death and destruction to the people in Normandy.
As World War I came to a close, the world powers met to decide on the final treaty that would officially bring an end to World War I. After a brief amount of time, the leaders came up with what we know today as the Treaty of Versailles. The four main leaders who had the greatest impact on the treaty were Vittorio Orlando from Italy, George Clemens from France, Woodrow Wilson from the United States of America, and George Lloyd from England. Germany, who was not invited to help decide on the treaty, was disappointed with the leaders' decision on Versailles. Germany was blamed for the war and forced to pay a great sum of money. Also, they were put under military restriction. After the war, Germany had to go into great debt. They were bitter because they never officially lost the war. They signed a treaty. When a man came that spoke outwardly against the treaty, Germany quickly named him their leader. This man was Adolf Hitler. This was the foundation for World War II. The main countries that allied with Germany were Italy, Japan, and Hungary. They were called the Axis powers. In order to defeat the Axis powers, a group formed called the Allies, whose main countries were Britain, France, and the USSR. Later, the USA joined after the bombing of their naval base in Pearl Harbor. The first of their army arrived in Britain January 26, 1942. Shortly after, on September 3, 1943, mainland Italy was invaded.
The United States military quickly organized an elite parachute airborne division known as the 506th Airborne Regiment. They were primarily used in D-Day to jump behind enemy lines to clear a path for those fighting on Omaha Beach. This elite group of men were also known as Easy Company. This regiment was formed in 1942. Their training was very harsh and vigorous, and only the best would fully complete it. Over a period of 15 months, the cadets would have to successfully perform 5 jumps, after which they would be rewarded their jump wings. During the soldiers' harsh training, the men kept in mind their motto, Shurhi, which means, "We stand alone together." Once trained, the men would board the Samaria in New York and sail for England. The voyage lasted 12 days. A week before their deployment into D-Day, the men were sent to a camp in England, where they would receive their final orders before jumping behind enemy lines in France. They were in this camp for a week before deployment. A young, fiery cadet known as Richard Winters became a growing leader in the 506th. He was born on January 21st, 1915, to his parents Richard and Edith Winters. After applying for United States military at age 18, his official entry date was August 25, 1941. He later would be known as one of the primary reasons Hitler lost the war. He went on to say, "The key to being a successful combat leader is to earn respect, not because of rank, but because you are a man." Later in life, Winters wrote several books about his experiences in the 506th Airborne Regiment. Also, Winters spoke at many World War II conventions. During one of his talks, he said, "War exposes the best and worst of those who are called to fight. I know no man who lacked character in peace and then discovered his character in combat."
On June 4, 1944, 13,000 paratroopers from the 506th equipped themselves for battle and boarded their planes, their main objectives being to secure the exits from the beaches, gain control of the Dove River, and ultimately capture Cherbourg. As they traveled to their drop location, their flight was rough, with much enemy fire from below. The pilots had to drop them quickly so that they had enough fuel for the return home. Their drop went haywire, and the paratroopers were spread across a vast amount of land. Many lost their guns and equipment, so they had to take the lost equipment from their fallen comrades. Because the paratroopers were so spread out, Germany thought this attack was far bigger than it really was. The US paratroopers were far more prepared for this than Germany was. A group of approximately 7 men, led by Lieutenant Dick Winters, destroyed 4 German 105 mm guns, clearing safe passage for the men fighting on Omaha Beach, saving many lives.
The paratroopers successfully carried out their mission in liberating France, starting the end of Hitler's tyranny. Tragically, this massive invasion left Normandy in ruins, with much destruction to the houses and buildings. The common people suffered from malnutrition and illness. Also, out of the 139 officers who parachuted into Normandy, only 74 of them came out alive. The liberation of Normandy gave the Allies a foothold in France and forced Germany to fight a war on 2 sides. This also resulted in the end of many concentration camps located in France. After the operation of D-Day, many cemeteries and memorials were developed for the fallen heroes who sacrificially gave their lives for the people of France. Also, soldiers were allowed to return home to their families.
The Allies managed to liberate France and end the war. Hitler realized he had been defeated and soon after committed suicide. All Jews were set free and concentration camps were shut down. Soldiers were allowed to return to their families. Though D-Day and World War II caused much death and destruction, it brought many countries together out of darkness and opened the gates for new beginnings. Much of the free world owes great respect for these brave soldiers who willingly risked their lives for all of us in this room. It was an honor to tell the story of the 506th Regiment and recount their sacrifice and courage.